Everyone wanted to know who saved 57 victims, but nobody expected the answer to be the nurse they had already rejected. The words echoed through the quiet conference room at Harborview Medical Center as powerful people searched for a name they believed could explain an impossible outcome. The city had been asking the same question for days. Who was the person who stepped forward when everything seemed uncertain? Who was the person who helped so many lives when others were afraid? And why had that person disappeared from the spotlight? At the center of the discussion stood Ethan Walker, a Korean Mafia boss known for his influence, intelligence, and ability to uncover truths hidden beneath appearances. He was not a man who accepted incomplete answers. The reports on the 57 victims told a story of survival, compassion, and extraordinary timing, but one detail continued to bother him. The person who had provided the most important help was never mentioned in the official recognition. Ethan looked around the room, his expression calm but serious. Who saved all 57 victims, he asked. Nobody answered immediately. The silence carried the weight of a truth that many people were not ready to face. Finally, someone lowered their eyes and spoke quietly. The nurse you suspended. Those words changed the entire atmosphere. A nurse who had been removed from her position? A woman who had been judged before anyone understood the full story? Her name was Olivia Carter, and for many people at Harborview, she was only remembered as the nurse who made a mistake. They did not remember her dedication. They did not remember the countless hours she spent helping others. They only remembered the decision that ended her career at the hospital. But Ethan knew there was always more to a person than the version accepted by the crowd. Years of experience had taught him that the loudest opinions were not always the closest to the truth. As he studied the information in front of him, he began noticing details that others had ignored. The timeline did not match the accusations. The statements did not match the evidence. And the person everyone had pushed aside seemed to be connected to the very outcome everyone was celebrating. Meanwhile, Olivia Carter lived a quiet life away from the attention she never wanted. She no longer wore the hospital badge that once represented her career, but she still carried the same sense of responsibility. She continued helping people in small ways, never expecting recognition or an apology. She believed that doing the right thing did not become less meaningful just because nobody noticed. But Ethan was about to discover something that would change everything he thought he knew. The nurse they suspended was not the person who failed. She was the person who never stopped caring. And when the truth finally came out, everyone who had judged her would have to face one question they had avoided for too long: how could they have overlooked the very person who saved them all? Olivia Carter had learned that losing a position was easier than losing the trust of the people around her. After the suspension, the halls of Harborview Medical Center became a place she could only remember from a distance. The conversations that once welcomed her became whispers. The co-workers who once asked for her advice now avoided her questions. But what hurt the most was not leaving the hospital. It was knowing that people had decided who she was without ever understanding why she made the choices she made. Before everything changed, Olivia was known as one of the most dedicated nurses at Harborview. She arrived early, stayed late, and treated every patient as if they were someone from her own family. She believed that medical care was not only about procedures and instructions. It was about listening, understanding, and giving people hope when they needed it most. But one difficult decision changed the way everyone looked at her. A situation that required quick thinking was later misunderstood by people who only saw the result, not the reason behind it. The hospital board made its decision, and Olivia accepted it quietly. She never tried to destroy anyone's reputation. She never searched for sympathy. She simply stepped away and carried the disappointment alone. Months later, while the world remembered her as the nurse who had been suspended, Olivia continued helping others in ways that no one noticed. She volunteered at a small community health center outside the city, where people came to receive basic care and support. The building was simple, with old chairs in the waiting room and small windows that let in the afternoon sunlight, but Olivia treated it like the most important place in the world. She never asked people about their status or background. She only saw someone who needed help. At the same time, Ethan Walker continued investigating the mystery surrounding the 57 victims. The more information he collected, the more questions appeared. He reviewed statements, timelines, and medical records, searching for the missing piece that explained why one person's name had been left out. Ethan had built his reputation by noticing what others overlooked. He understood that the truth was often hidden beneath the first version of a story people wanted to believe. When he discovered Olivia's name connected to the events, he expected to find someone bitter or angry. Instead, he found a woman who was still helping others despite everything she had lost. That surprised him more than any document or report. Ethan had met many people who wanted recognition for their actions, but Olivia seemed different. She did not talk about what she had done. She did not demand that anyone apologize. She simply continued doing what she believed was right. For the first time, Ethan began to question the story everyone else accepted. Maybe Olivia Carter was not the person who failed. Maybe she was the person everyone failed to understand. And as he continued searching for the truth, Ethan realized that finding the answer was no longer just about solving a mystery. It was about restoring the name of someone who had never stopped deserving respect. The first thing Ethan Walker noticed about Olivia Carter was not the mystery surrounding her. It was the peace she carried despite everything that had happened. When he finally met her at the small community health center outside the city, he expected to find someone frustrated by the world that had turned against her. Instead, he found someone who seemed more focused on helping others than defending herself. The room was simple, with a few chairs, small medical supplies, and the quiet sound of people waiting for care. Yet Olivia moved through the space with confidence and kindness, making every person feel important. Ethan watched silently as she spoke with patience, answered questions, and offered reassurance. There was no anger in her voice. There was no desire to prove anyone wrong. She simply did what she believed was right. That was the moment Ethan began to understand that Olivia was unlike anyone he had encountered before. Throughout his life, Ethan had seen many people protect their image. Powerful individuals often wanted others to remember their achievements, their influence, and their success. But Olivia did not talk about the people she had helped. She did not mention the sacrifices she had made. She did not even know that Ethan was investigating her connection to the 57 victims. She had moved forward without expecting anyone to look back. As Ethan continued gathering information, he discovered details that challenged everything people believed about Olivia. The official reports focused on the decision that led to her suspension, but they ignored the circumstances surrounding it. They ignored the pressure she faced. They ignored the information she had at the time. Most importantly, they ignored the people who benefited from her actions. Ethan began speaking with individuals connected to the event. Slowly, a different picture appeared. Former patients remembered Olivia's compassion. Colleagues remembered her dedication. People who had once remained silent began admitting that they never truly understood what happened. The truth had not disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath assumptions. Meanwhile, Olivia continued her daily routine without knowing that someone was working to restore her reputation. She believed her chapter at Harborview was finished. She believed that some things in life could never be repaired. But Ethan saw something she could not see herself. He saw a person who had lost a title but never lost her purpose. One evening, Ethan reviewed the final pieces of information in his office. The city lights reflected through the windows as he looked over the documents that changed his perspective. The woman everyone described as a failure had become the person who explained the greatest act of compassion they had witnessed. Ethan leaned back and thought about how easily people accepted the first version of a story. They judged quickly. They moved on quickly. But the truth waited patiently for someone willing to search for it for the first time in years. Ethan felt something stronger than curiosity. He felt respect. He knew that Olivia Carter did not need him to save her. She had already shown her strength by continuing forward when nobody believed in her. But he also knew one thing. A person who had been misunderstood for so long deserved to have the truth finally heard. And soon, everyone at Harborview would discover that the nurse they suspended was the same person who had given hope when others needed it most. The more Ethan Walker learned about Olivia Carter, the more he realized that the story people believed was never complete. Every document, every conversation, and every memory from those who knew her revealed the same pattern. Olivia had always been the person who stepped forward when others stepped away. Yet somehow, she had become the person everyone blamed. Ethan returned to Harborview Medical Center with a different perspective. Before, he had walked through those halls searching for information. Now, he walked through them searching for the truth behind the people who had shaped the story. The hospital looked the same, but Ethan saw it differently. He noticed the empty space where Olivia once worked. He noticed the quiet expressions of employees who remembered her but rarely spoke about what happened. He understood that silence could sometimes hide as much as words could. Ethan began meeting with the former members of the medical team who had been present during the events involving the 57 victims. At first, many were uncomfortable discussing Olivia. They remembered the controversy more easily than the person. But as Ethan asked deeper questions, small details began to appear. A nurse remembered how Olivia stayed calm when everyone else felt overwhelmed. A doctor remembered how she considered every possible option before making decisions. A patient remembered the kindness she showed during a difficult moment. Slowly, the image of Olivia changed from a suspended employee to a dedicated professional who had been judged without the full story. Meanwhile, Olivia continued working at the community health center, unaware that the truth about her was beginning to return. She spent her days caring for people who had nowhere else to go. She never mentioned Harborview. She never complained about what happened. When someone thanked her, she simply smiled and said that helping people was what mattered. That humility surprised Ethan more than anything else. He had expected someone carrying disappointment to be focused on proving others wrong. Instead, he found someone who had already forgiven people who never apologized. One afternoon, Ethan visited the community center again. This time, he did not arrive with the questions. He arrived with respect. He watched as Olivia finished speaking with the family and carefully explained their next steps. When she noticed him, she looked surprised but welcomed him politely. Ethan asked her about the day everything changed at Harborview. For a moment, Olivia became quiet. She looked through the window at the people waiting for care and then answered honestly. She said she wished people had asked more questions before making decisions. But she also said she understood that everyone made mistakes. Ethan listened carefully. Her response confirmed what he had already discovered. Olivia was not someone searching for revenge. She was someone searching for peace. As Ethan left the community center, he carried a new understanding with him. The world had labeled Olivia based on one moment, but he had seen the thousands of moments that defined her. He knew the truth about the 57 victims could no longer remain hidden. The people who once questioned her deserved to know what really happened. And when that day came, Ethan knew the silence surrounding Olivia Carter would finally be broken. The moment Ethan Walker decided to reveal the truth, he understood that facts alone would not be enough. A person's reputation could be damaged in a single day, but rebuilding trust required something deeper. It required people to look beyond what they had already decided to believe. For years, Olivia Carter had carried the weight of a judgment that did not tell the complete story. Now, Ethan was determined to make sure the truth was finally heard. He returned to Harborview Medical Center with a collection of information that changed everything. The reports, the conversations, and the memories from those involved created a picture that was impossible to ignore. Olivia had not abandoned her responsibility. She had not ignored the people who needed help. She had made a difficult choice in a moment when every second mattered, and that choice had protected countless lives. The more Ethan reviewed the details, the more he realized how unfairly Olivia had been treated. The official explanation focused on what went wrong, but it never recognized what she had prevented. It ignored the people who were safe because she acted with patience, knowledge, and courage. Ethan arranged meetings with hospital leaders and former staff members who had been connected to the situation. At the first, the conversations were uncomfortable. Some people avoided eye contact because they remembered how quickly they accepted the first version of events. Others admitted they never took the time to understand Olivia's perspective. They had seen a decision. They had not seen the person behind it. As the truth slowly became clearer, emotions inside the hospital began to change. People started remembering Olivia differently. They remembered the nurse who stayed with the frightened patients. They remembered the professional who listened before making decisions. They remembered the person who never treated anyone as a problem to solve, but as a human being who deserved care. Meanwhile, Olivia continued her work at the community health center. She had no idea that conversations about her name were happening again at Harborview. She remained focused on the people in front of her. To Olivia, helping someone today mattered more than receiving recognition for something she did in the past. One evening, Ethan visited her after the health center closed. The quiet building was filled with the soft lights and the peaceful sound of the city outside. He told her that he had discovered the truth. Olivia looked down for a moment, unsure how to respond. She did not ask if people finally believed her. She did not ask if her old position would return. Instead, she simply asked if the people who needed help were safe. That answer revealed everything Ethan needed to know. Olivia was not waiting for an apology. She was not searching for approval. She had already found meaning in the work she continued to do. Ethan realized that this was exactly why the truth mattered. The world needed to know about Olivia not because she wanted praise, but because people deserved to understand the kind of person they had overlooked. The next step would not be about defending Olivia. It would be about allowing everyone else to finally see her clearly. The day Ethan Walker decided the truth could no longer remain hidden began with a quiet moment inside Harborview Medical Center. The building was filled with the familiar sounds of people moving through their daily routines, but something felt different. For the first time in months, the name Olivia Carter was no longer spoken with doubt. It was spoken with curiosity, respect, and a desire to understand. Ethan knew that the hardest part of changing people's minds was not presenting facts. It was helping them recognize the person behind those facts. He had seen powerful individuals spend years protecting their reputation, but Olivia had done the opposite. She had lost hers and still continued serving others without asking anyone to notice. That was what made her story impossible to ignore. The hospital leadership gathered once again to review the information Ethan had uncovered. This time, the room felt different. The people inside were no longer searching for reasons to defend their previous decisions. They were searching for a way to understand what they had missed. Ethan explained that Olivia's suspension had become the only thing people remembered about her, while everything she had done afterward had been forgotten. He reminded them that a single moment could never represent an entire person. The evidence showed a woman who acted with responsibility, patience, and compassion when circumstances were difficult. As the conversation continued, more voices began sharing their memories of Olivia. A former co-worker described how she always stayed calm when patients felt uncertain. Another remembered how she supported younger nurses who needed guidance. Someone else mentioned that Olivia never looked for praise, even when her efforts made a difference. Each story added another piece to the truth. The image of Olivia that had existed in people's minds began to change. She was no longer the nurse who had been suspended. She was the nurse who had continued caring even after losing the recognition she once had. Ethan watched the reactions around the room and understood something important. Justice was not always about correcting a mistake publicly. Sometimes, justice was about allowing people to finally see someone clearly. Later that day, Ethan visited Olivia at the community health center. He found her organizing supplies and preparing for another busy day of helping others. When he told her that people at Harborview were beginning to understand the truth, she paused for a moment. She looked grateful, but not surprised. She simply said that she hoped the attention would remind people to listen more carefully before judging someone. Ethan admired her response because it showed exactly who she was. She was not waiting for the world to celebrate her. She was hoping the world would become kinder. As Ethan walked outside, he looked back at the small health center where Olivia continued her work. He realized that the person he had been searching for was never hidden because she wanted to disappear. She was hidden because people had chosen not to look closely enough. The question about the 57 victims had started as a search for a name. But it had become something much greater. It had become a reminder that true heroes are not always the ones standing in the spotlight. Sometimes they are the ones quietly helping others while the world forgets to say thank you. The truth about Olivia Carter had finally begun to reach the people who needed to hear it, but Ethan Walker knew that recognition was only the beginning. Restoring a person's reputation was not simply about changing a few opinions. It was about repairing the trust that had been lost when people chose assumptions over understanding. At the Harborview Medical Center, the atmosphere continued to shift. The same place where Olivia once walked with confidence before her suspension was now filled with conversations about the dedication she had shown all along. Employees who had once avoided the subject began sharing memories they had kept quiet for too long. They remembered the small moments that revealed Olivia's character. They remembered how she stayed with worried families, how she encouraged new staff members, and how she always treated every patient with the same level of care. Ethan watched as the hospital slowly recognized what he had already discovered. Olivia was never defined by the decision that removed her. She was defined by every choice she made afterward. Meanwhile, Olivia remained focused on her work at the community health center. She heard that people were discussing her name again, but she did not allow the attention to change who she was. She continued arriving early, organizing supplies, and helping everyone who came through the doors. Her life was no longer built around proving people wrong. It was built around doing what she believed was right. One afternoon, Ethan invited Olivia to return to Harborview for a private meeting with the staff members who wanted to speak with her. She hesitated at first. She had spent months accepting that her connection with the hospital was over. She did not know if returning would bring back old memories. But Ethan reminded her that this was not about reopening the past. It was about allowing people to acknowledge the truth. When Olivia entered the hospital, the feeling was different from before. The same hallways that once carried uncertainty now carried respect. People approached her with sincerity, not curiosity. Some apologized for making judgments without knowing the full story. Others thanked her for the impact she had made, even when she was no longer part of their team. Olivia listened quietly. She accepted their words, but she never used the moment to make anyone feel ashamed. Instead, she told them that everyone makes mistakes and that the most important thing was learning from them. Her response surprised many people because they expected disappointment or anger. Instead, they saw forgiveness. Ethan stood nearby and watched the moment unfold. He had spent his life around people who believed power came from control. Olivia showed him something different. Real strength came from having every reason to become bitter and choosing kindness instead. As the meeting ended, the hospital staff looked at Olivia with new understanding. The woman they once believed had failed was the same woman who had quietly made a difference when it mattered most. Ethan knew the final truth was now clear to everyone. Olivia Carter did not need to become someone new to be respected. She only needed people to finally see the person she had always been. The story of Olivia Carter had finally reached the moment when the truth stood stronger than the assumptions that once surrounded her. For months, people had remembered the wrong thing about her. They remembered the suspension. They remembered the questions. They remembered the uncertainty. But now, they remembered the person behind the story. At Harborview Medical Center, the halls that once felt distant to Olivia became a place where understanding replaced judgment. The hospital staff saw what Ethan Walker had discovered from the beginning. Olivia was never defined by a decision made during a difficult moment. She was defined by every act of compassion that followed. The recognition did not change Olivia. She continued arriving at the community health center with the same quiet determination she had always carried. She still listened carefully to every person who needed help. She still offered comfort without expecting anything in return. The only difference was that more people finally understood the value of what she had been doing all along. Ethan watched this transformation with deep respect. When he first searched for the person who saved the 57 victims, he believed he was looking for an answer to a mystery. But along the way, he discovered something far more meaningful. He discovered a person who showed that character is revealed when nobody is watching. Ethan had spent much of his life surrounded by people who measured success through influence, reputation, and control. Olivia showed him another definition of strength. She showed him that a person could lose a position and still keep their purpose. They could lose recognition and still continue making a difference. They could be misunderstood and still choose kindness. One evening, Ethan visited the community health center one final time before leaving the city for a while. The room was peaceful, filled with the same warmth Olivia created every day. He thanked her for reminding him that power was not about being noticed. It was about using what you have to help others. Olivia smiled and told him that she never considered herself extraordinary. She simply believed that every person deserved care and respect. Ethan knew that humility was exactly what made her remarkable. News about Olivia eventually spread beyond the walls of Harborview. People learned about the nurse who had been judged too quickly and recognized too late. They learned about the person who continued helping others even after losing the support she once had. But Olivia never chased the attention. She never wanted to become a symbol. She only wanted to continue the work that gave her life meaning. Looking back, Ethan understood that the question about the 57 victims had never truly been about finding a name. It had been about discovering the kind of person who could make such a difference without asking the world to notice. The answer had always been there. It was the nurse everyone had suspended. The nurse everyone had misunderstood. The nurse who proved that true dignity does not come from a title, a position, or the approval of others. It comes from the choices a person makes when nobody is watching. And from that day forward, everyone who knew Olivia Carter remembered the same truth: the greatest heroes are often the ones who never asked to be recognized.